Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Bibliomancy for Beginners, which is a very random book club where we try and talk about stuff. You know, we tried to be bi-weekly, and then it turned into monthly, and then it turned into, we all finished? Okay, let's go.
But it always remained, we're trying.
We, we are trying.
I published my monthly wrap up for September on the YouTube channel today, and I started to say and I think we're really gonna get it on track, and I stopped and I was like, I've been saying that since January. I have to accept that this is life now.
This is on track.
We're on track.
Change your standards, not your posting.
Fair. So yes, today is the final episode of the regular summer. It's October. Summer season of Bibliomancy. We're going to be talking about this behemoth that Taylor decided was a good choice. It's really long, guys. And it has pictures, but it's still really long.
Yeah, the pictures don't...
Operative word being Taylor thought it was a good idea. Had I known how much of a colossal time waste this giant thing was going to be, I would have said, Taylor!
It took Brett 2 weeks just to carry it home.
I had to walk uphill both ways in my cardboard shoes.
Oof. So that's happening. There might be swearing. There might be snoring next to me because I have a boyfriend who's trying to sleep.
That seems like a poor choice. Kick him to his own couch, Michaela.
He doesn't have a couch, so... Oh, what? But he'd be on the floor.
Up in the tub.
He also... In the tub?
Norwegian wood.
It's okay. He'll be unconscious and he won't mind. He's like one of those people who sleeps like they're dead. I've never experienced this phenomena, but hey.
One of those people who sleeps.
No, I don't.
We don't know.
What is sleeping? We're the weird night owl English majors. So yes, Taylor's pick. I guess I can read the back of the book. If you haven't read it, this is a book club. We are going to be talking about the characters and events of this novel.
Yeah. We don't just look at books here. We open it.
Really? I was only here for the pretty pictures? You mean there are words?
What?
That is literally what you told us before going live. We're just excited for the pictures.
Okay, so here's the back of this book, guys. A Bluebear has 27 lives. I shall recount 13 and a half of them in this book, but keep quiet about the rest, says the narrator of Walter Mower's epic adventure. I should be lying if I claimed that my first 13 and a half lives were uneventful. What about the mini-pirates? What about the hobgoblins, the spider witch, the babbling billows, the troglotroll, and the mountain maggot? What about the venomous vampires, the gelatine prince from the 2364th dimension? Mine is a tale of mortal danger and eternal love, of hair's breadth last-minute escapes. Welcome to the fantastic and wondrous world of Zamonia, populated by all manner of extraordinary characters, and created by author and illustrator Walter Mowers. Bluebear's adventures unfold episodically from his first life, which begins as the miniature baby Bluebear floats in a wayward chestnut in the outer vortex of a giant maelstrom. This 13-and-a-half life, a peaceful interlude following his confrontation with the infamous Spider Witch. In the 12 lives between, Bluebear explores a lost continent. It's a land of imaginative lunacy and supreme adventure, wicked satire, and epic fantasy, all mixed together, turned on its head, and lavishly illustrated. I should also note that this was translated from the German by the fabulously named John Brown John.
And say what you will about the book, incredibly talented with translation. This is a beautiful text.
Especially something that has a lot of clear wordplay in the naming of things. It makes me wonder, like, I can't read German, but like if I could get the original text, if he took liberties or like actually like slaved over what he was going to name all of these things.
So there's so much complication in just single words. Like,
Yeah.
I said, because they are from German and because I speak partial German, am partial German, like I definitely saw a lot of the roots in some of the made up words for sure. Because there isn't a lot of. I'm used to the consonants train wrecking upon themselves, which is a very German trait. But God, the fact that translating this book, I'm just in awe of this man, even past his fabulous name. I just so much respect.
That this back page is incorrect. It cites his final life following a confrontation with the Spider Witch, which is halfway through the book.
I thought that's what happened, but I wasn't sure if it was like a slip of the tongue. I had to give my copy back to the library today, so I don't have it.
It is technically not wrong. It is following that. It's just not immediately following that.
That's just acknowledging linear time, Michaela.
They're not wrong. They're just not right either.
7 follows 2. You can't disagree.
It does. What do you want from me? So yes, that's the book. We start with our spoiler-free overall reviews, although I'm sure you sort of have an idea of what everybody's going to say because you've watched all of our other book clubs, haven't you?
Yeah.
All 100 and something of them.
God, there's been a lot now.
Mowers book.
The other Mowers book was not a good hangout. Maybe don't watch that one.
Because if you don't know, we scheduled 6 episodes for season 4. The first 3 were themed. We all picked a YA text. And then the last 3 were all books by an author that we'd already read or a follow-up in a series we'd already done an episode on. I come into this at a small disadvantage because I missed the previous episode we did on Walter Mowers, which is for his book Rumo. I was having a life at the time.
How dare you?
I know. So that's my lead-in to say that if I had read Rumo and had known a little bit more about what I was getting into, I might have yelled at Taylor much earlier for this thing.
If you had read it, I might not have had to choose this.
He really loves Walter Mowers and just wanted to share it with you, Gretchen.
Knowing that this is everything that I hate, he chose it. And here, if you
look at that smug grin, Jesus Christ.
Like, every time he's inflicted Kelly Link upon me, my thing is I hate this overt fantastical, and I feel like this novel is if Kelly Link read 17 like physics and math textbooks and then wrote a novel. Like, that's what I feel like. I completely respect the intelligence behind this book, the imagination behind this book. I mean, just one of the concepts, you could pick one out of a hat that he uses in this book for, basically anything. And they're really smart, really well thought out, and really interesting on their own. But when they train wreck into a book this long that has absolutely no goddamn point, I respected it, but I had to start skimming through it because reading it started feeling like a complete waste of my time because it was too long. Had it been half the length, I might have been more interested and more willing to say, wow, so cool, so fun. But like, the style of the book got real old for me after about like 1. Because there's so much telling, so much description, and it gets so boring.
Gretchen, for a book that's built off the concept of let me tell you the great story of my life, it's a lot more lively and coherent than Fitzmorley.
Most things are. But like, I mean, we literally get the whole chapter when he's in. Oh, this is a spoiler. Never mind. I'll bring this up later because I want to talk about this. So I'm just gonna end that there and let someone else talk. But
As someone who has read Mowers before, when we did Rumo, I do have to say that I liked Rumo better than I liked this book. I feel like Rumo had a more concrete narrative to tell. It overall felt more like a novel, whereas this felt like a collection of meandering short stories, sort of like Gretchen said, that were linked together, but they didn't like. Does that
like, you
sound?
didn't have to. You could have read like Life 7
Yeah,
and had an amusing story, and you didn't need
yeah,
the
yeah.
rest of it.
Guys, it's a confetti cannon of imagination. We all agree.
Right. Which has its place. Like it's an enjoyable book to like dip in and out of. I feel like that I had kept dragging my feet on it because I don't want to read fantasy right now in this way and
In your
I,
life.
in my life in general. And I sat down and just sort of like plowed through it in a day or two. But I feel like I might have liked it more if I had had the perseverance to like read a life, put it down, read something else, come back to it, read another life, put it down. Because it doesn't need the continuity, and it very it just doesn't. It was okay. It was like a 3-star book, like not the best book.
I gave it
Enjoyable
2.
at times.
I mean, I do not disagree with these criticisms. I absolutely, Michaela. I feel Rumo is a much more coherent and strong narrative, and for books that were pretty much equal in length,
Mm.
Rumo I can read through without ever feeling like I am trying to climb through coagulated quicksand. Topical
Yes,
reference. Topical reference.
yes.
This, I did read. This, I think, was my third time reading it, but the first time in like 6 years at least. I did read it in a much more spaced out, life by life, a day or two between. And that was the best way to do it, I feel.
Hmm.
But there are also quite a few parts that drag on, and especially by the third time, like I remember every single part of this chapter and I am just suffering right now. That being said, there were easily 3 chapters in this book that I would just reread forever and be happy.
Okay, I want to know what these are because I have one.
Okay. These aren't spoilers, so I can get to them now.
Also, I mean, like, I think we can just throw it out there. Like,
Yeah.
spoiler-free period is done if you don't want to be spoiled for this book. There aren't really spoilers, though. This is just like, there's not really a plot to be spoiled. Not really.
There's very few books that I feel can be spoiled. And then when they can be spoiled, more often than not, they're spoiled on the dust jacket, and I get so sad.
It's true. Okay, I need to find my third one because I'm struggling with that for some reason.
Because I mean, I know what one of them is because my favorite chapter and the one that I felt was the most interesting is one of yours that you like.
Never mind, I remembered it. Do you want me to say them now?
Yes.
Okay, so my third favorite was the Spider Witch chase because I love the pacing in it. It's short and just the stages of his delirium has all the imagination of like what I like about mowers, but it was a little more concise. I really liked the Bolog's head, the dream organ. I think that was just gorgeous. Also, a fairly short section as well, once you get rid of the excess scenes in the head. And then, obviously, the. What was even the proper title of it? Like the Arena of Lies, or whatever it was called.
Oh, you totally left out the one that you told me you liked.
What was it?
The tornado.
I think it's an interesting one, but it definitely wasn't my top 3.
Oh, I think that was the only chapter that I was reading through it and I felt like something was happening consistently that I wanted to read. And while the 3 that you mentioned, I enjoyed parts of, in terms of a single life where I didn't feel at any point during the chapter I was bored or it was dragging,
Mm-hmm.
was that one.
That's fair.
So as a cohesive whole, it wasn't like my favorite idea that he brought in a life for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because like, I mean, you're right. Like the dream organ was really cool. Just and like his conception of like travel between dimensions, that was cool. There was a lot of really cool ideas, but as like a chapter, life, whatever, that made me feel like something could actually happen in this book. That's like the most cohesive thing.
Okay, I
That I
totally
saw.
hear you on that. Because as much as I love the Congladiator bit and like his massive sorry.
You vibrated violently there a bit.
It was Duolingo harassing me that I haven't studied Swedish today.
No.
Duolingo gave up harassing me because I stopped doing German.
Anyway, so as much as I think that competition was just like the most fun I've had, there's the section earlier in that life of like 6 pages of describing like the different sections of Atlantis and just
I mean,
and I don't want to read this right now.
I genuinely think that the Atlantis chapter is my least favorite because it goes from being the 6 pages of description about these beings that I will identify, I will run into maybe once or twice and don't need all this information on. And then, like, the Congladiator thing is fun, but then it ends up being just like rehashing something I've already struggled several hours of reading through, like towards the end of it, and it doesn't go anywhere and it doesn't add to the story. And I'm just like, this is literally just like, because I think it's one of the longest chapters,
Oh,
Mm.
absolutely.
and
Yeah.
it's the one where the least happens as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for being that long, I don't get it. And I was
Okay.
so bored.
So bored.
So bored. I
Yeah.
skimmed. I did this for the whole chapter. Just this.
No.
Mhm. But yeah, so I like this book. Definitely, of the mowers I have read, it is technically the last on the list. But there are such peaks of imagination despite these dragging lows that I still feel very much positively about it overall,
Mm.
I
especially in
mean,
hindsight.
I
When you're
will say
you have all of those great parts.
I will say that it's one book that it's like one of the books that I've rated the lowest, but I would be willing to read something else by the author.
Mm-hmm.
Because usually when I rate something like 2 stars, I do not want to read anything else by that author. I'm not interested. Like, I've just completely disconnected. And with this book, I wasn't sure if I wanted to give it 2 or 3 stars, but like the immense amount that I hated the process of reading it because it just felt like such a waste of my time meant that I could not in good conscience rate it 3 stars. But at the same time, like, I have so much respect for that confetti gun of imagination, as you so call it, and the thought that went into just one of the processes that, like, I would be willing to read something else by him, but like not quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Yeah.
But like, I think that's like the only one of the few times I could ever say that, just because I do have a respect for the obvious, like, great
Craft.
mind behind it. So
You would indulge me with another brief thing to say. I think this is one of his earliest novels that was published. I know it preceded Rumo
Yeah.
by several years. I think 4 years. But
1999 is when this one came out. I don't remember when Rumo
close to
came out.
2004. But what this feels like to me is a very clearly brilliant imaginative author who was given free reign to just throw as much as he wanted into a book, and they were going to publish it no matter what. It just felt like he was allowed to go completely off in any direction he wanted for as long as he wanted, and not rein it in with narrative or relevancy that
not be constrained by the hallmarks of story, like narrative.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which means, I mean, this can't be his first book. I don't know what his debut was.
He was a comic artist before it, and I don't know very much about his publishing history. But...
I mean, I guess I was about to say, because in American publishing, there's no way this is your debut novel.
Well,
like, this is not happening.
All I know is that this was his first of the Zimonia series.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying that, like,
I think he had more books before it.
Okay.
But
because, I mean,
this is the first.
For a publisher to take on something like this book, which I understand it's a translation, so it doesn't follow, like, an American conception of how a novel is supposed to work, because it is very different, like film in other countries, stuff like that. Like, it's not the same, but at the same time, for, like, an American distributor to distribute it to an American audience, like, he had to have some kind of tagline behind his name.
It was already hugely popular in Germany for a long time first.
Hey, friends.
Okay. Yes, sorry, Michaela.
If we are to believe the Wikipedia,
blessed be its
this is his first published novel. He had 4 very famous and, like, popular comic books.
Mm-hmm.
One of which about Bluebear, actually, beforehand.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so this one was published in 1999. The second was Ansel und Gretel, which has not been published in English yet. Then was Rumo, then The City of Dreaming Books, then The Alchemist's Apprentice, and then The Labyrinth of Dreaming Books, which is different.
Alchemist's Apprentice actually ranks lower than this.
Ugh.
So yes, so there probably was enough popularity, at least for the character, to warrant this. And, like,
yeah. Oh.
If I was a person who read that comic, or, like, comics that had this story, I can see why this novel would be something I would want, because it's just more stories about the character I care about already, like, if that makes sense. Like, when people write prequel novels that, like, you wouldn't read first, even though they come first in the timeline, because it's about characters that you would only care about having read the original work.
That's so crazy, though, because, I mean, especially, I mean, the way that we conceptualize comics anyway, just, like, with the density of prose in this book, like, trying to conceptualize, like, comic writing in that way, it's just, that's a lot. I would be interested to see them.
So, like, here, I will give a Tiny Michaela story. Tiny Michaela and adult Michaela love Red Hood. Like, give me all of the fucking Jason Todd everything. If they came out with a Jason Todd novel that was just, like, 1,000 pages of him being fucking weird, I would read the hell out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I've only ever seen him as a comic, and sometimes as an animated character, but mostly as a comic.
I would also like to say, if what I like, so when I was speaking to my Austrian friend some years back about mowers, is, if I understand correctly, in, like, Germany and Austria, he's basically J.K. Rowling in terms of just how well known he is. He is, like, a household children's writer name.
Oh, that was one of the things I wanted to talk about. I felt like this was a kid's book, but it was shelved in the general fiction in my bookstore.
Oh, it's totally a kid's book.
I know.
I mean, but here's my thing too. I think that, like, Tiny Gretchen first off, would have been bored out of her skull, as adult Gretchen is. But also, like, I'm glad that I read this as an adult because I think that there are a lot of very complex concepts that are in this that as a kid, like, depending on my mood that day, maybe I would have been interested in. But, like, as a, like, more of a thinker adult now, I guess, who understands more of the, like, basic concepts that go into the larger concepts he creates, just, like, on the physics side, math side, whatever. Like, yes, it reads like a children's book, but I definitely got more out of it as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Which I
Does that
think
make
can be
sense?
said of some kids' books that we read when we were younger, too.
Well, yeah, I guess I was just thinking of just the actual, because I mean, when I'm talking about concepts in this book, like, there are actual, like, mathematical, theoretical, spiritual things that are tackled that, I mean, it's like in actual theoretical, like, formulaic form.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or even things like Moloch, which is a very complicated reference to be making, and that's very clearly made in the book. It's not just, I like the name.
I like the
I mean,
name.
I think half the time, too, some books that kind of might read like they're written for children get shelved as general fiction or are called general fiction because of just simply vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, especially in '99, they didn't believe that children's books could be this long. Like, until J.K. Rowling, like, really told people that kids, or showed that children would read bigger books. Like, children's
So,
books weren't
like,
allowed to be this long.
Yeah.
working in the kids department, those of you who need a life update, Michaela is now the kids lead at Barnes & Noble, so I work in the children's department almost exclusively. There are so many really good-looking, chunky juvie young readers, middle grade fiction that I'm so sad that we missed out on because we like we're just at like the beginning of this trend.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see the difference between books that were written before Harry Potter was a thing and books that were written after. Because, like, all of the books that I'm like, oh, I remember reading that, are like this big. And then there's a whole bunch of really popular stories that start like this big and get a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. And I'm like, where were these, like, really good, well-crafted, longer stories when we were little?
That's why I skipped middle grade as a genre entirely as it was experienced by us. And so when we were kids, there was really just like children's and adult. There really wasn't, and you had like some middle grade, young adult definitely wasn't a thing when we were like that young. I skipped what would have been considered middle grade then because they were too short. They weren't involved to me. So like that's why like middle grade for me still to this day is such a foreign concept, even more than young adult. Because like I never backtracked that far because what's imprinted in my head is all those tiny children's books that were dumb. And sometimes I do wander back into the kids section and I'm like, really?
It's really funny because in the young reader wall, which is grades or ages 7 to 12, which has overlap with the teen section and overlap with the chapter book section. So, like, your chapter books are things like Junie B. Jones and Captain Underpants, like those really, really thin, little skinny things with really big font. And the only difference between the young reader's middle grade fiction and the teen is that the teen will have, like, usually more romantic themes or more violence. It's just a little bit as Gretchen gags. But the young readers have things like Goosebumps, which are small books. Like Goosebumps is technically a young reader's title. I think that there's one called the I Survived series, which are pretty small and vaguely nonfiction-y. Things like Because of Winn-Dixie, which is really short, good book. Holes, Hoot, they're all pretty short, like standard classic young readers, young fiction. And then you start seeing some things that sort of cross genre, like The Hobbit, which was placed both in young readers and general fantasy. Philip Pullman's series is placed both in young readers and general fantasy.
Oh, Jesus, the Amber Spyglass.
Remember that?
Yeah,
We still haven't finished it.
I haven't started it.
Well, yeah, none of us have.
No.
So wait, Michaela. So so say that Captain Bluebear and his boring lives came out now.
Now, today?
Like, yeah. So because something that I've definitely noticed, like, I wouldn't put it in young adult because
No.
it doesn't fit there. But like, I'm still not sure that I would shelve it even in middle grade.
Put it in general fantasy. I'd be too afraid otherwise.
But like, I'm just thinking that I legitimately think that it's like a vocabulary thing.
I don't know, because we underestimate children so much, I think. Like, I read friggin' Moby Dick in 7th grade. Like,
Michaela, you're preaching to the choir here. We agree with
Yeah.
you.
But no, because
which is why I'm saying, like, just because there's words they might not know, it encourages them to learn.
here's my worry about putting that in that section and having somebody who likes chunky books pick it up is that if you are having this book picked up by somebody who's on the fence about whether or not reading is really an enjoyable pastime, like a book like this might be something they wouldn't have patience for.
I guess, but a person who's already going for a book this thick is probably a dedicated reader.
Mhm.
Most of the kids that are reluctant readers that have come in either want a graphic novel or a small book, something they can finish, because they have to read for school. They make them do independent reading. So they get a graphic novel, which is mostly pictures, or they get a small book that they can read relatively quickly.
And when we were talking about Harry Potter letting longer books exist, bear in mind, this may have come out in 99 in Germany. It wasn't actually translated in and published in the US until 2006.
I guess I just can't get off my soapbox that this is really boring for most of it. And the only redeeming quality is the think beats thoughts.
Well,
like,
bear in mind, it's not boring to everyone, and I'm not even saying that I have a different opinion than you. Like, clearly, many people find it interesting.
Again,
oh yeah, no, again, and I can see why. Like, if I was just a slightly different reader, then I would be way more willing to give this the time that. I mean, I think for myself that it deserves. Like, I'm not saying that at all. Like, this book deserves a reader who's willing to think about these things and explore these ideas and enjoy the absurdity of it. That's not me. And if we've learned anything over the last 4 seasons, that's not me. And I can stand there and say, that's not me. And
I know you don't have whimsy, Gretchen.
it's not that I don't have whimsy. I just don't have patience for somebody to hit me over the head for 700 pages with nonsense that has no point to it.
And that's one of the reasons why I feel like this would be good for kids, though.
I mean, I guess that's fair.
Because they are more open to just going along for the ride, for the fun of it. It doesn't need to have a narrative per se. We want a narrative. We want some sort of payoff as an adult to make like the time investment and the feeling investment in these characters worthwhile. When you don't get that, it's unsatisfying. But kids don't need an end of the story. They just need fun.
I guess, though, for me, it's just that they need fun, but in a way that's fun. Like, there's so much of this book, which is just like telling and explanation and summary, and there was so much of it where there was definitely scenes like the Spider Witch chase, which, I mean, and the typography that was awesome, just absolutely awesome, just use of the page as a medium, like 100% loved that. But just, I mean, there were, like Taylor was just saying, his top 3 chapters are awesome when you cut away the excess, and there was just so much excess around what could have been awesome on its own. You know what I mean? Like, and I just...
It's kind of a mood thing, because there are other times where I just adored the lists. I'm like, yeah, just make up silly names for 3 paragraphs. I love it. There's so much flavor in each of them.
Yeah,
So
I don't have the patience for that shit.
I don't think it can or should exist without those.
I also think that if this is what it sort of appears to be, and that it's like lore for a character that's already existing and already loved by people,
Okay, yeah.
this is the perfect type of thing. Like, it doesn't need to all be great, because it all is just telling you more about this character that you've already been invested in some way. We haven't, but the people who were reading this originally in Germany probably were accustomed to and did know Bluebear in some aspect. And this was Moores being like, you wanna know what the rest of his life? Here.
Yeah.
Lore. Sometimes it's boring, but there are people
like I
who
said,
love lore, so
I'm not going to argue with you. I respect this book entirely, but like I said in the beginning, you both knew from the first chapter of this book that this is everything that I personally hate.
oh yeah, no.
Yeah.
I knew before I even started reading it that you weren't gonna like it, having read
well,
Rumo.
For some reason, I continue to give Taylor the benefit of the doubt, which I should really just stop.
You don't
I
have
think, in part though, I can understand why Taylor picked it though, because it is a very Taylor book.
I mean, that was a joke. Me too. It's a very Taylor book, which is why it's a very not Gretchen book.
Yeah.
Those two things are generally the same.
Sometimes. Anyway, the reason we like book club is because we all have very different opinions on what books we like.
Wait, Michaela, you did not mention what your favorite part was. Maybe.
And fight.
I think it was the witch one, like chapter wise, like if I was going to pick a chapter, but I think for me my most enjoyable part of it was actually the like way that this book was set on the page. Like, it was a really interesting mix of mediums. I mentioned that before we went live that my favorite part was the pictures, but it was like sometimes the text was also pictures. There's typography things that changed and handwriting things. And I actually really enjoyed how sort of it made it feel like a journal more so than just a novel that is like obviously a first person telling of a story. It became more personal in that way. So the construction of it actually was probably my favorite part.
So, like, this was one thing that I kind of wasn't sure about as I was reading it. And a lot of times, books, when the typography, like the font changes, it just goes back and forth between two fonts, and that font just means other things. And
Yeah.
so I got very used to the encyclopedia font, which that turned into a cool aspect for a majority of the book, though. I hated every time that happened so much.
When the font
Before it was
changed?
introduced, you mean?
No. When the encyclopedia showed up.
Well, no, before the encyclopedia was introduced as a thing.
Yes.
So before the conceit was established, it was retroactively appeared.
But even after that, it was so boring. So boring. Except for the times when it was like integrated into the story as it was going along. That was useful. But anyways, this is not the point.
Okay.
So I got used to that font. And then when we met the Zimonium thing and the font was different, and I was like, why are you doing this? Like, because I'm so used to it being like a one different established font. And then when they started talking in his brain and the fonts were different, I was like, oh, I understand, and this is so smart now.
Yeah.
But like that was one of the things that I don't know, that was pleasing to my eye just to look at on a page.
At the same
There are times sorry,
on.
Taylor. Oh, I was just going to say there are times that changing font bothers me because it seems like a cheap way to, like, you should be able to make the voices different. Like, you don't have to change the font. But I feel like actually in this case, because of how graphic the book is, how interactive it is in that way, that it was actually like a good choice to do that. So it didn't bother me at all, but like I understand why text changing font can be annoying because the voices should speak for themselves. You shouldn't have to change the font.
I was going to add that I agree with both your statements. Add additionally that I did find the very basic gag of him just never asking for instructions on how to use the encyclopedia, which, because the entire book is set up by, well, not all of it, but many situations are set up by him hearing parts of it and making a decision based off it. And then only afterwards, the additional part says why he did it wrong. I like the very basic gag of, oh, you could have avoided this if you'd actually ask for a very simple thing.
Yeah.
I did want to counter that with saying the SS Moloch chapter. Oh my god, most tedious, structurally lame chapter.
Well,
Like,
that's
I felt no tension in any of that
You know,
Zimmerman
Lee,
conflict.
I was thrilled by that chapter because I knew it was so close to the end. And I was like, I'm getting there, guys. I'm so close. So I don't even really remember that chapter except for the fact that it was like, boom, here's where all the bears are. And I was like, God in heaven.
Can you
Of
do
course.
the head bob again, Gretchen?
Whatever
Perfect.
this is. Thank you. Oh, God.
Again, being said,
yeah.
come aboard the Moloch was just a great line to have, like, echoing through that. I loved that part. It's got such a great feel to it from the start.
I was just gonna say too, like, kind of tying back into so, because like I didn't do any research on mowers before we did this book. I was just like, boom, book, because I don't like to look into books or things before we read them. I like to come to them as, you know, as fresh as I can. But like the idea that he does do comics just makes so much more sense now as I'm thinking about the book, because as someone who not only could create this crazy story, but then integrate the way that even just text, because there is some images, but not a lot, but just that text can be used on a page. I just like, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. But I'm also really impressed that he was able to create that without constant pictures. Like, just being able to use words to create an atmosphere is really cool. So I will say that.
He is a talent. This is his debut novel. It definitely has its flaws. We all had moments where we were like, oh my god, can we get on with this story? And we all had moments where, oh, that was pretty imaginative and fun, and I like that. And okay, it's okay. You might like Rumo, Gretchen, if you can get past your sort of dislike of the whimsy of it, because it does have a stronger narrative. Both Taylor and I liked it, which was a problem, because then our hangout was just the two of us being like, remember that bit? Yeah. Yeah. But
I mean, I legitimately felt like this is kind of what it would be like if Kelly Link wrote a novel. Like, not, but also yes.
Not,
like,
but yes. Okay, I can accept that.
Like,
yeah, because I was going to be like, I mean, she's weird, but she's not this flavor of weird. It's a different type of weird.
no, I just like,
Yeah.
because like my issue is like when I was reading this book, like my criticism of it felt very similar to my issue with Kelly Link short stories, which is there's just so much going on and so much of this feels unnecessary to me, and that's what I felt about this too, except for it was a novel form. So unlike when we read the short stories, and also Kelly Link short stories, especially in the last one that Taylor had me read, the latest collection, which then felt like they got to a point. Like there was a point at the end of the story. And then this was like trying to pretend that it was half of his life, but at the same time, like the book finished and I was like, but this is an end.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Like,
It ended. That
Yeah.
did happen.
I think the most apt comparison between the two is that they both have an unfair number of ideas, and they don't have the decency to spread it out over a reasonable number of stories.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fair.
I will say there was like
Think to our level.
there was some sort of solace in the almost coming back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Like the Maelstrom being the sort of like
I think
bookend on this novel. Like it definitely felt like an end. It was just maybe not. And to be fair, it's the first half of his life, so it is kind of in the middle.
Yeah,
And
but at the same time,
super depressing note.
Yeah.
It's like,
but like,
now for my half-life of peace, which means halfway through it, everything goes to shit.
Yeah.
well, because like for me though, for like saying like this is half my life and how everything was bookended, like the Maelstrom comes back, Deus Ex Machina comes back, the Moloch comes back, and so it felt like it really was like an open and closed like kind of circle. And then he's like, and I don't know what's gonna happen next, and I was like, I really don't. You know what I mean? Because like so many things did tie back together, and usually I like that. But when you're trying to tell me that like don't know what's coming next, but I've got this hot wife and I'm ready to settle down, and like all of these things are bookend, and I was like,
really, what else do you need but the hot wife?
Well, to be fair, he does open the story saying everywhere this takes place is now underwater and gone. So, in ending his half-life with bookends, he's saying this entire chapter of the world is over. It's been resolved. Everything's gone now.
And it's almost as if I am birthed and floating in a walnut once more.
no God in heaven, just
Yeah, boat and nice walnut wood. Great for shipbuilding.
it's a good thing he likes to be on the water.
He does.
Because
Yeah.
Noah ain't got no chance.
Bears. Those bears.
So, I guess we should end this in the way that we've ended, I think, all of these repeats. Gretchen sort of answered it. Would you read something else by Mowers, having now read multiples?
Would I?
Yes, Taylor.
No.
Would you read them again
I
and again and
decide
again and again?
as a person, as a concept. I hit his face, but he doesn't like to be photographed.
I definitely think that, like, I can see the appeal in Mowers. I have enjoyed his work. I'm so burnt out on the fantasy that I know that, like, it'll be like 20 years before I'm like, you know what? Maybe I can pick up another Mowers book. Not because Mowers is bad, but because I'm just like, can we read something, like anything?
It's
Guys.
like reading the Odyssey. You need to really be ready for it.
Yeah, and like
I would also be looking at the size of them first, because literally, if I was now presented with another Mowers book that was like this thick, I'd be like, unless you were asking me to take you out with this book, please take it away. Like that's, especially if you're Taylor. Taylor, please present me with a very long Mowers book so I can hit you with it.
Rumors is about Rumo is about the same size as this, maybe a little bit smaller, but like
But
it's
also 2 books in a sense.
It is, yeah.
Gretchen, the reason I love having sessions online is that I never need to worry about your threats of physical violence.
Honey, remember that we're moving in together. And then feel
I'm
less
on a
safe.
different floor.
You will be on a different floor.
Probably not during book club.
From behind a locked door.
Taylor chooses to always be just in another room. Okay. So we have one more book in the his Dark Materials series to read and talk about. I am not going to give any sort of specific date for that. I would like for the three of us to. Yeah, Taylor? I would like for the three of us to read Let the Right One In this month of Spoopytober, because horror is my.
Because Spoopytober.
Because Spoopytober. And hopefully we can do some sort of Halloween thing, whether we actually manage to get it done by Halloween or not. We might come to you at Christmas time and be like, remember when we did Spoopy-tober?
I feel like that's like I feel like we'll prioritize Spoopy-tober because it has like a time, and because none of us wants to read the Amber Spyglass. Like,
yeah, we'll
this
just
time
leave
next
Amber
year, we will
Spyglass.
finish 2000 Chunky.
It's fair. It's just fair. Yeah. So that's a thing. So if you would like to join us in that, feel free to pick up a copy of it and read it, and maybe watch the awesome Swedish film, and then maybe watch the American version, which I think has a tiny Abigail Breslin in it, or Chloe Grace Moretz. One of them. They're like interchangeable. Yeah.
Or
Hey, and
Anna's
for
face.
the next book club episode, at least 2 of us will be in the same screen.
At least.
At least, depending on this like nebulous time frame.
You know what I just realized? If it weren't for my hair and my headphones being black, I would like totally just be a giant beige. Just this is just giant beige screen.
Mhm.
Anyway, so yes. Sleep well, sleep
Yeah,
well, sweet ones. Go to bed.
So unless you want to hear me talking about Moloch on air, just if anyone's still listening, just do some research on Moloch. There's cool stuff. I'll make them listen to my rant after this is live.
Okay.
Interesting.
All right.
There's socials in the down bar if you want to find us elsewhere. Gretchen and I do the YouTube thing. Gretchen's doing it better than I have been at the moment, but hopefully that will change soon because I have been reading things. In my avoidance of Captain Bluebear, I read, I think, like 4 other books. So,
That's my entire month of September.
yeah. So that's the thing. Yeah. Mwah. Goodbye. Annyeong.